All right, everyone. So today we will be going over Giyu versus Muichiro all forms, and I have a special guest that will be not arguing, but explaining Muichiro scaling. A very famous wizarder and a very great Demon Slayer scaler. Now, I'd like to introduce Animeato, or his nickname Ato.
Yes, sir. I'm going to be doing the Muichiro scaling in this video.
Yeah. And I will be letting him go first with his Muichiro scaling, then I'll go base skew, and then, keep going back and forth until we get to the end.
Alright, so basically, our first matchup is going to be SVA base Muichiro, Swordsmith base Muichiro, if you don't know what SVA means, versus base Giyu, or pre-usher training art Giyu. But Null can explain why they're basically just the same. So just take it as base Giyu versus base Muichiro. So basically, base Muichiro is pretty shown consistently to be below base Gyoko, which is shown via the fact that when he goes in for his blitz attempt, you may be able to argue that he does scale above him in speed, because of the fact that he's able to tag him on the neck and Gyoko doesn't really react. But the fact that Gyoko later in the fight is able to react to Marked Muichiro 2 times, the first one is off guard as well, which is even better. And he says to Mark Muichiro that he's gonna try harder, or he's not gonna go as easy, something along those lines. Should put Muichiro, in base below Gyoko, and where you would scale him then, since it's just below Gyoko, would just be to the clones, because when he goes to attack the main body does dodge, but he doesn't get away. He gets away from the attack, not completely, but he is able to dodge, and he's not able to tag Karuku. Karuku is able to react, and these clones are able to react to base Tanjiro and go relative with him, which would mean with the Mark amp, Muichiro should be below Mark Tanjiro from SVA, which would then lead into no scaling for base Giyu, for why he's above base Muichiro. But yeah, you got the will.
Gotcha. All right, so again, would love to get into all the interesting stuff, but I want to go over the small things first, because small things matter when you build up to the big things. So we're gonna start with Giyu versus Rui, which he's able to easily react to him, which Tanjiro got dominated by him. Reacts to him, cuts his head off, perception blitz him, and he's also able to react to Shinobu trying to deliver a death blow to Tanjiro, and even go as far as to catch up to her in speed and put her in a headlock. Practically, blitz her too, in a way. But that's not important. We could go into the further stuff with pre-Hashira training arc and the Hashira training arc, which, in the Hashira training arc, as we know, or if you don't know, if you didn't read it, Giyu actually doesn't train for a majority of the arc. He sits out due to him feeling as if he shouldn't even be the water pillar. He doesn't deserve to be the water pillar. And, Tanjiro talks him out of this suicidal depression state that he's in, where he then goes participates at the end of the Hashira training arc. But what's important about this is that he wouldn't receive any significant amps from, training the new demon slayers, or the lower ranking demon slayers. The only thing we know that would give him a amp, maybe not a significant one, but at least a decent amp to his stats, would be fighting and sparring with Sanemi, which is the only fight we're aware of that he fights with somebody on equal par and equal terms with him. And then going into Infinity Castle, we have Giyu fighting Akaza, which he's able to go relative and react to not base Akaza, Compass Akaza, which in a right before that, Mark Tanjiro was able to, if anything, blitz and go relative, or even, I wouldn't even say relative, I'd say he was blitzing Akaza before he popped Compass Needle, and then Giyu's able to go relative with that Akaza and block his or lullify his disorder with Deadcom. And that's pretty much all we get for him, and him going relative for a few more panels before he gets taken out the fight. That is all I really have to say for base Giyu.
Yeah. So basically, where you would connect, basically to Muichiro, even if you think that Akaza's holding back, which I think he is, pretty blatantly against Giyu, that would still Giyu does perform better against Akaza than Mark Tanjiro does, which is pretty shown via the fact that he has to save him a lot. Tanjiro barely able to react to the holding back compass Akaza. And this is a significantly stronger Mark Tondra than the one that we have already above base Muichiro. So that would pretty much just scale Giyu above Muichiro. For diff, I'd probably just say low diff at best for Muichiro because of the fact that we already have Tondra being a Mark level stronger than him, and he gets a significant amp from going through the Hashira training, becoming Hashira level stated by Giyu. So yeah, that would just mean that what's it called? Giyu would just be above him. And where we go from there is SPA marked. And this is the form that fought Gyoko, by the way. But this version of Muichiro, it doesn't really change anything for the fight. Maybe the diff goes a little higher, but that's about it. Because we see that Muichiro isn't even that much faster than Gyoko, which a lot of people probably didn't remember that much. He's not that much faster than Gyoko without 7th form. We see that when Gyoko goes to punch him, Muichiro dodges at the last second and still doesn't get away completely. He gets tagged in the shirt. And when Gyoko uses his final attack, if you actually zoom in on the page, that double page spread where he's just attacking around the forest, Muichiro's getting pressed by the attack, which is shown by his facial expression. So that would just mean that Gyoko can press Muichiro pre 7th form. Now with 7th form, he is pretty much faster than Gyoko. He's able to completely dog him. So he is above upper 5 tiers with 7th form. But without that, he's like below, no, not below, at that level. But with 7th form, at best, you can get him to upper 4 tiers because of his scaling to Mitsuri, which I'll explain. During Mitsuri's fight with Zohakuten, they're explaining her technique speed, which the reason they give for it being faster than Tengen is due to her flexibility and weapon. Notice how none of this involves her physical speed, which the fact that it's only noting these factors and not speed, which would probably give me the impression that physically, at least, she's on Tengen's level of speed, which you can scale Mark Muichiro above Tengen with 7th form. It's like he's above Gyoko tiers of speed. Gyoko's above Gyutaro, who can tango with Tengen pretty well. And whether you think Tengen was weakened doesn't really matter because Gyutaro is able to tag him at the start of their fight. So you could get Muichiro to base Mitsuri level speed, and base Mitsuri can combat Zohakuten. But that's really all you can get for Mark Muichiro. He doesn't have scaling after that. And that would still mean that Giyu's above because his scaling to Mark Tanjiro in the Infinity Castle would get him above base Akaza, and because Tanjiro is able to outpace him like 2 or 3 times, cut his limbs off and shit, which base Akaza should be above Zohakuten pretty blatantly because it's not guaranteed that he's gonna fight someone with a significant compass amp. Those people don't come around that often. So his base would have to be above upper 4 tiers for him to be consistently above that tier. So yeah, Giyu still wins. I'd probably mid diff. And we just then get into Hashira training arc or marked or what's it called? Infinity Castle. Pre-seed through world, of course. Which I'd say that this goes either way because of the fact that if you do use anime scaling, which I personally don't know if I do use it, but if you do use it, which I don't care if you do or don't, I'm not going to argue canosity or anything. Muichiro does do he doesn't really do speed training after that. His speed training, all he does is like sword skill training with Iguro, which doesn't increase his speed, at least provably. And he does physical training with Sanemi, but that gets cut off halfway, so it's probably not significant. And he does strength training with Gome, so it's not anything to do with his speed. So Muichiro, if he's relative base to base, with Mark he should be at least relative, maybe above, which would put Muichiro and Giyu in a similar level of tier in combat speed. But Null can explain why that wouldn't really mean that Muichiro can win the fight because of Giyu's superior reactions.
Yeah, as we know, if anybody keeps up with Giyu's scaling, we do know that Giyu's reaction speed is way above his combat speed because he can react to things that is even outside of his perception. For an example, when Akaza uses end style at the end of their fights, he's able to still block attacks even though he cannot perceive them with lull. So I feel like his reaction speed is definitely way beyond his combat speed. So that gives him a bit of an advantage over somebody like Muichiro currently.
Yeah, and just to specify,
Mhm.
what's it called? This doesn't mean that Giyu can react to end style. What's it called? Oh my god.
But yes, this does not mean Giyu can react to end style.
Mean that Giyu can react to end style. I'm not saying me or Null are not saying that he can react to end style in base. That's pretty outrageous. He's struggling to react even while marked. But this does mean that since Giyu can't perceive this shit, even like with his mark, and can react to it, this should prove that this should correlate to base that he can react to things above his perception. So yeah, this Giyu has like relative speed to Muichiro if you use manga scaling, which would mean that he has the reaction speed advantage, so he should be able to get the upper hand on Muichiro. Muichiro shouldn't be able to hit him that much. And 7th form isn't really quantifiable, like after this. For Muichiro, he doesn't really have feats with it, besides Kokushibo no dipping him and turning him to a painting. So yeah, Giyu should take that. But then we should just go into our final round. There's no point of going over C-through Muichiro versus base Giyu. It's pretty obvious C-through Muichiro wins if you take the scaling that we went into account. So
Yep.
yeah, you can get into Marquis scaling.
So again, to mark Giyu real quick. After Giyu comes back from his little nap, Giyu goes on to take on Akaza now with his new profound mark, where he's almost able to cut his head off, blitzing him. But Akaza starts trying harder, which would mean he's now going relative with, in my opinion, I think is a not holding back Akaza. So from that point on, they're able to tag each other in multiple instances and fight for an extended period of time. We're not totally sure how much time they were fighting, but we know it was enough time for, Tanjiro to figure out a strategy, monologue, and figure out how Akaza fights. So him and Giyu were fighting for quite a while, and we do know Giyu succumbed to fatigue, which allowed Akaza to start getting the upper hand in the fight. But they go pretty relative, and then Giyu, just like we mentioned earlier, Giyu's able to use that calm to react to an attack that is way above his normal speeds. So he's still able to block majority of end style, but has a lot of trouble blocking all of it. So he can react to it, or he can perceive it and react to it, but just not all the way. So that's still something that's above his normal speeds that he can react to, just like we mentioned before.
Alright. Giyu being borderline upper 3 levels of speed, it's pretty relevant because we do see that a holding back, well, not necessarily holding back, not necessarily holding back in terms of his physicals, but he isn't using his breathing when he does this. He's able to cut off Akaza's hand at the upper moon meeting. Akaza doesn't really notice until his hand literally drops onto the floor. The instant debunk would probably be that Akaza's off guard because he's in the middle of cutting Doma's head off. But the issue with that is that even if he is off guard, he should be able to notice a man literally coming in front of him and cutting his hand off. And the fact that he doesn't, it's like if I'm walking in an aisle in Walmart and some dude cuts my hand off. Like, even though I'm not paying attention to him, I'm still gonna notice some dude cutting my hand off. Which is like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. And there's no moon breathing tiles in this instance, so he shouldn't be using his breathing here. So he should be holding back. And the fact that this is the case would mean that Muichiro would be above Giyu in terms of combat speed. No, not combat speed necessarily, but reaction speed. He should be able to react to Giyu's attacks because the fact that base Sanemi can fight this version of Kokushibo with breathing, so you can even argue that he's trying harder in this instance than against Akaza. And Muichiro is able to outpace forms that are like, what's it called, faster than Sanemi. You can say that like Sanemi is relative to the forms, whatever, but we do see that when Kokushibo starts launching them, Sanemi's barely able to react. He gets tagged from a distance, and he's like using all of his strength just to dodge. Meanwhile, Muichiro doesn't get tagged by these forms at all, and yeah, the instant debunk would be like distance, the fact that it is a longer distance. But we do see in one of the instances, Muichiro is able to save Sanemi, and I do believe that this isn't a distance thing. I do believe Muichiro did travel a further distance because of the fact that we know that Kokushibo attacks the weaker opponent on the battlefield. It's shown when he's fighting Sanemi and Gyome. He chooses to go for Sanemi first. He says it verbatim that he's going to cut his sword and then go for Gyome. And another instance is when he goes for Genya instead of Muichiro to cut him in half. So yeah, I basically say that if Muichiro was on that battlefield, when that was occurring, basically Kokushibo would have went for him instead of Sanemi, but he didn't. So the fact that he didn't do that would mean that Muichiro probably did travel from off the battlefield to fight him, which is insane because of the fact that these forms are again able to outpace, even though Sanemi's weakened, should be above his base form. So yeah, that would mean that Muichiro should be able to react to most, if not all, of Giyu's attacks because of Kokushibo being above Akaza. Now, it gets interesting because Muichiro doesn't really have a lot of combat speed feats. His combat speed feats are pretty like it's just gonna be what we discussed earlier. He doesn't have feats with Seeds of the World. Seeds of the World doesn't really amp your combat speed. I don't really feel like going into that in depth. It just doesn't do that. It's more of a reaction speed amp. So that would just mean that it's just gonna be a battle of Muichiro has the travel speed to go up to Giyu and cut him, but his combat speed is going to be lacking, and Giyu, as we established, has way better reactions than his combat speed. So I think it would be a pretty pitched battle. But in the end, I would give it to Muichiro because of the fact that if Giyu does use an attack on him, Muichiro should be able to precog where the attack goes in advance. Because Kokushibo was able to do that against Gyome, he's able to know what form he's going to use before he even uses it. So we should be able to plan in advance before Giyu uses this form and be able to get off hits based on Giyu's movement that he's able to see linearly. So yeah, I would say that it is a pitched battle, but in the end, I would say that Muichiro is able to consistently get off his attacks and win the battle in the end. So yeah. I'd probably say mid-high diff for Muichiro. Yeah, you guys got anything else to add?
I think it's high, and I also do want to go back to Kokushibo cutting Akaza point because I didn't want to add something to that. It's also just consistent when Kokushibo cut Akaza's hand off, it didn't immediately regenerate. If he wasn't, or like if he just didn't get perception blitzed, he probably would have, regenerated his arm, or because he has one of the fastest regeneration speeds out of the entire Upper Moons. So the fact that he just didn't regenerate his arm or his hand fast just means that he was so he got blitzed so badly that it really just didn't register like, oh, my arm's gone or my hand's gone. We know if Akaza had perceived Kokushibo and his hand got cut off, he probably would have immediately regenerated it, but his hand stayed gone for quite a minute, if I'm not mistaken.
It's also just a lot more blatant because Gotoge does this trick where she puts this little white spark around the thing that the character's focusing on, to notice that they're becoming aware of something. So, and this happens when Akaza gets his hand cut off. The thing comes onto his hand, and to me, that makes it look like he's just now perceiving it. And if you want to use the anime yet again, Kokushibo isn't even on screen when he cuts his hand off; it just falls off. So yeah, I just say that it is definitely a perception blitz. So yeah, I just say
just a bunch of evidence to back up these claims, really.
Yeah, but if you got anything else to add for the for the outcome of the fight or how the fight goes, you can go ahead and do that.
Nothing much. Honestly, this video was pretty fun to make, but people do kind of exaggerate the fact of like with Demon Slayers just like blitz or like annihilate each other. Majority of Demon Slayer's stats kind of differ. So of course, I do think Muichiro would win. The fight wouldn't just be like a 10-second fight though. Like that's what people think, and that's where the misconceptions come. Like they would fight and it would go on for a little bit, but of course Muichiro would win. He just has some of the better stats in See Through World, which is like really good for him. So yeah, I think he'd win like high diff. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much going to be the end of this video.
Yep.
If you are subbed to, this is on Melch's channel, and
Yeah.
what's going? I'm a guest, but if you aren't subbed to me already, go and sub to my channel. You know.
Yep.
But yeah.
And if you did enjoy the video, like and sub to me and Alto. Alto pulls out amazing edits of topics like JJK, Demon Slayer, etc. More animes. And yeah, it's just like great content to watch when you're bored or you just want to watch and see some debates if you just want to get ideas on them. And my videos are more long term, but honestly, both content is great, and this was a really fun video to make.
Yes, sir, it was pretty fun. But yeah, that's gonna be all of us today.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.
Peace.
And I'm just going to press save.